Hi, it's Jonathan, and welcome to another Trident news video. Today is my first episode in March, which means that winter is over. I've got to change out my winter uniform for lighter clothing. Be right back. There. Now that I've got my lighter uniform, I would like to bring you some news in relation to the war in Ukraine. From February 18th to February 21st, my homeland, the United States, sent plenty of messages about the war. On February 18th, the United States sent its first message. Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, announced that the United States would formally accuse the Russian Federation of crimes against humanity, including gruesome acts of murder, torture, rape, and deportation. She also warned Beijing that any steps by China to provide lethal support to Russia would only reward aggression, continue the killing, and further undermine a rules-based order. Moreover, Harris noted that if Putin wins, then other nations could feel emboldened to follow his violent example, thereby concluding that the West should renew our commitment to the rule of law by supporting Ukraine. After all, as she pointed out, no nation is safe in a world where one country can violate the sovereignty and territorial integrity of another, where crimes against humanity are committed with impunity, where a country with imperialist ambitions can go unchecked. Harris concluded that although there are dark days ahead, Ukraine as well as the United States and Europe would rise to the task and eventually win the war. On the next day, the 19th, the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, issued a different announcement, a warning that the government of the People's Republic of China might supply weapons to Russia. I don't think the commies are going to help us. Why am I not surprised? However, the day after that, the 20th, the United States sent its third message in a row, but in a very different format. An official visit by Joe Biden, the President of the United States, to Kyiv. Biden said to the Ukrainians that, "We have every confidence you're going to continue to prevail," and that the Kremlin's expectations that could last Ukraine was, and I quote, "dead wrong." This visit sent both a stated message and an unstated one. Jake Sullivan, his national security advisor, explained the visit as follows. The visit today was an effort to show and not just tell that we all continue to stand strong. An author in The Atlantic explained this message in a much more blunt way. The visit was a gut punch to Russia's leader. Biden would leave Ukraine later that day, but the following day, he appeared in Poland to give yet another message. At the Royal Palace in Warsaw, the capital of Poland, our president gave a speech with numerous messages. The speech was almost 25 minutes long, but you can check out the footage and the text of the speech down in the description. However, I can condense the important details here. After our head of state thanked Poland,
one of our great allies,
for hosting him, he recalled his thoughts on the war when it began. Biden recalled that a year prior, at the beginning of the largest land war in Europe since World War II, it seemed like Kyiv would be captured. However, he recounted what he saw in Kyiv the previous day as follows.
Kyiv stands strong. Kyiv stands proud. It stands tall. And most important, it stands free.
Biden recalled that this test for the ages proved that the democracies of the world were united for Ukrainian sovereignty and
for the right of people to live free from naked aggression.
He listed several examples of this success, including the supplying of weapons to Ukraine, Europe's work to end its reliance on fossil fuels from Russia, and even NATO not only becoming more united, but also possibly gaining more members in the near future.
He thought he'd get the Finlandization of NATO. Instead, he got the NATOization of Finland and Sweden.
Our commander-in-chief then praised the resilience of Ukraine and the West. He then argued,
"The democracies of the world have grown stronger, not weaker. But the autocrats of the world have grown weaker, not stronger. Because in the moments of great upheaval and uncertainty, that knowing what you stand for is most important. And knowing who stands with you makes all the difference."
Citing as evidence the Polish struggles for independence in the 19th and 20th centuries, the opposition movements in modern-day Belarus, and the very existence of Moldova. Therefore, the President of the United States gave the reassurance that the US, the West, and the larger world will still support Ukraine. He also gave reassurances to the Russian people about this war, that the West is not fighting against Russia or its people, just against its government. Biden just wants the war to end. Our president explains,
"So tonight, I speak once more to the people of Russia. The United States and the nations of Europe do not seek to control or destroy Russia. The West was not plotting to attack Russia, as Putin said today. And millions of Russian citizens who only want to live in peace with their neighbors are not the enemy. This war is never a necessity. It's a tragedy."
Biden then elaborates that Putin could have ended the war
with a word,
and explains why Ukraine doesn't stop fighting.
"If Russia stopped invading Ukraine, it would end the war. If Ukraine stopped defending itself against Russia, it would be the end of Ukraine."
This would also explain why the West supports Ukraine itself, and why Biden promised to continue supporting
a Ukraine that's free, sovereign, and democratic.
He also promised that the US would remain committed to NATO, including Article 5 of the North Atlantic Charter, which ensures that whenever a NATO member state is attacked, the rest of NATO would come to their aid. Biden promised that he would remain committed to Article 5, calling it
sacred oath to defend every inch of NATO territory.
Our president explains these promises by reminding us of the responsibility of NATO to defend freedom, because
there is no sweeter word than freedom. There is no nobler goal than freedom. There's no higher aspiration than freedom.
He then reminds the world that the American people know this, calling on said world to
let us move forward with faith and conviction on an abiding commitment to be allies, not of darkness but of light, not of oppression but of liberation, not of captivity but yes, of freedom.
Our president then closes by thanking Poland for hosting the speech, and American and Ukrainian troops for defending freedom. If you were to ask me about this, I think these have been quite a productive series of days for telling us what the United States thinks of this war. If there were any doubts, the government of China is not an ally of democracy, but my homeland, the United States, would support Ukraine to the end. In other news, on the 20th, Putin has suspended his country's participation in the New START Treaty in response to the war, before holding a ridiculous rally on the 22nd in which he spoke for 4 minutes before a very strange assortment of guests. Maddened musicians playing anti-war songs in praise of a war,
No, please no.
Patriots that were apparently paid the equivalent of $6.50, government employees that were sent by their bosses, and most disconcertingly of all,
Леонидович, это те самые дети, которых вы спасли. А помните Аню Науменко? Она здесь сейчас хочет сказать важные слова. Спасибо. Анечка, умничка, не стесняйся, говори. Мы с тобой, мы рядом.
Спасибо дяде Юре за то, что он меня, мою сестру и сотни тысяч детей спас с Мариуполя. Я чуть-чуть
some youngsters who thanked the Russian military for, I forget a little, Tell me, George, what did the youngsters thank them for?
For saving them, I guess.
Right, for saving them from their homes. Since the recording of the original section of this video, I got some further news on this subject. It turns out that the forceful transfer, also called an abduction or kidnapping, of Ukrainian children, which might include poor Anya Naumenko at Rally, is officially a war crime. On the 17th of March, the International Criminal Court in The Hague issued arrest warrants for both Putin and his Commissioner for Children's Rights. Neither of them will be in any of the countries in green, members of the ICC, anytime soon, unless they actually do go to The Hague. Coincidentally, on the same day, only hours later, it was announced that our friend, Chinese leader Xi Jinping, will meet Putin in Moscow the following week. Congratulations, comrade! Now you have ties to a war criminal. Then, from the 20th to the 22nd, Xi did visit Moscow, and on the 21st, he even met Putin himself. Apparently, Putin and Xi discussed the Chinese peace proposal to end the war in Ukraine. At this point, I'm obliged to remind you that the proposal in question advocates a ceasefire that would allow Russian troops to stay in occupied regions of Ukraine, and calls on the West to end all sanctions on the Russian Federation that are not approved by the United Nations Security Council, which just so happens to include the Russian Federation. By the way, I have a message for the communists in a language they would understand. Kitайский мирный план иди на корабль. Meanwhile, on the 18th, the day after the planned visit was announced, my dad told me that China is trying to flex its foreign relations muscles. I said that those muscles are atrophying. Finally, if you were to ask me, I'd say the warrants are well deserved. As Russian emigre protesters say, Putin to The Hague. For now, let's continue with this video. One of my fellow YouTubers, a Russian on extended vacation in Georgia, not our Georgia, has even made a video about it. The video is quite informative, but the concert rally is quite mad. Anyway, more legitimate rallies occurred on the 24th and the days afterwards, as activists, both in Russia and around the world, commemorated the 24th with anti-war protests. Some of them are Ukrainians or Americans, of course, but many of them are Russians. In Seoul, Russians and Ukrainians even protested together, while in San Francisco, they joined Belarusian and Iranian protesters in singing a Ukrainian patriotic song, Червона Калина, or the Red Light Burning. Apparently, the Russian diaspora also appeared in protests as far away as Haifa and Sydney, and as near to me as my home city of San Diego, California. Quite interesting. Finally, our last current event for today is also something related to the Russian opposition. If Biden's schedule is a little bit more open, then he could have visited the beginning of the second session of the Congress of People's Deputies, a Russian opposition group intending on becoming a provisional government of Russia if the current one is overthrown. I'll tell you more about them in a future video, but in short, this group was originally founded in November 2022 by 59 Russian opponents of the war, including many current and former members of federal, regional, and local legislatures. This group then held its second session from the 20th to the 23rd of February, in which it proposed several laws. One of these laws is a proposed constitution that would not only replace the Russian Federation with a Russian Republic, but also, among other things, enshrine the referendum and free elections as the highest direct expression of power, establish a multi-party system, guarantee the right to revolt against unconstitutional governments, and even grant Russian regions the right to self-determination, including the ability to secede. But Congress also passed several other laws, including a Freedom of Speech Act to decentralize the media, a Revolutionary Act to manage the post-Putin transition of power, and a Peace Act to withdraw troops from Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, and Syria. Of course, none of these laws will go into effect unless the difficult effort to change the Russian government is successful. However, these laws are interesting, so I'll continue to observe the current events in Ukraine, Russia, and Poland to see what happens. I hope you found these videos informative. If you want to learn more about the current events in Ukraine and elsewhere, I suggest that you stay tuned for future videos of this series. For now, I'm Jonathan, and this has been Trident.